Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Green Pass Gaming's Coffee Morning Sunday podcast, where we're just going to sit down, hope you've got your teas and coffees ready, and we're just going to have a nice an hour-long chat about the week. Hope you're all doing well, and just having a bit of a relaxing morning before we carry on with the rest of our day. So, you know us all by now, but for anyone who may be new joining in, I've got to introduce people, I guess. So yeah, I'm Putz, as you probably saw in the bottom left corner of my little window, and with me today is Scott and Luke. How you both doing, guys? All right?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much.
Very well, thanks.
Good. And fortunately, Flap can't be with us today because he is busy with all sorts of other things that he's got going on in his life. So we're just going to sit here today and enjoy some gaming chat. And we've got a good couple of things that came up actually just as we couldn't make our Thursday show. A few little bombshells dropped, which was a bit unfortunate timing on our part.
It was all right. It was a bit of a bastard, that, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was literally like 20 minutes after we thought, look, it's a little quiet this week. Let's leave it till Sunday. And then, yeah, the E3 one in particular just obviously blew up a little bit, didn't it? So
yeah, it's mad. I mean, I suppose we can jump straight into E3, I guess. E3 being cancelled for 2022, hoping to re-emerge once again like a phoenix in 2023. And I know when I saw this, I instantly saw a lot of tweets and stuff of people comparing this to, was it the 2021 that was cancelled?
Oh,
There was one that was cancelled and it came back. I think that's right. 2020 was cancelled because it came back last year. And a lot of people were then saying, oh, it's called...
It was cancelled last year, wasn't it?
Was it last year?
Last year it was cancelled. I think 2020, they had... It wasn't cancelled because if I remember, it was 2020 when both Summer Games Fest from Jeff Keighley and E3 were claiming shows as part of their digital thing, and then I think last year it was cancelled. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I remember it. But I mean, even 2020 pucks, you could say it was cancelled because there was no official digital event, there was no obviously in-person event or anything. So yeah. Yeah, Stubbs has just said there that E3 didn't happen in 2021. Soren X says the last E3 was digital. So yeah,
I remember the last one being a digital show. I just couldn't remember if it was last year or the one before. But I suppose it's one of those questions of how do we feel about it to start with? Because I know for me, I know a lot of people in the community for apparently a number of years. And I know when we've spoken about this in prior shows as well. A lot of people saying they feel that E3 was kind of on the decline. It was slowly dying, maybe becoming outdated. Every time I've tuned into it, I've always loved it. I think as we've described again in other shows, it's like the Christmas of gamers in effect. It's when we get all of the big juicy stuff. Yes, we've now started to kind of be trickle-fed things later in the year or in sporadic times throughout the year, whether it's earlier or later. But E3 always seems to be that one calendar point, I think, for all of us heavy gamers out there that just love to get caught up on what's new or to get updates on current things. So to see that it's been cancelled, it's like... it's a shame, really. I was really looking forward to it because I think the immediate question for me then becomes: so what replaces it? Does something replace it? And as you said, Scott, things like Summer Games Fest and things like that kind of try to tie things together. I know we had. I think I'm right in saying 2020 there was the Xbox and PlayStation, Nintendo ended up kind of doing their own things, but it was all kind of off their own accord as well. So it was nothing. You didn't know whether it was going to be within the same week, the next week, was it 2 weeks, a month later? And it was all very sporadic, if I remember correctly. So I've personally always enjoyed these E3 events because it's just it's collated all into a nice kind of pocket of 3 to 5 days, or whatever it is. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Are you disappointed with it?
I think so. I mean, look, the ESA aren't the perfect organization by any stretch, and I think a lot of people will say kind of the writing's been on the wall. Even before the pandemic, E3 was kind of on a downward slope where it was becoming less relevant for media, and it was becoming less relevant for game developers and publishers. Nintendo switched to their digital events. They still had a big presence on the actual show floor. PlayStation pulled out entirely. Activision pulled out entirely. And it became a much smaller and less relevant event. And then COVID hit and kind of basically wiped it out entirely, didn't it? So, but I think, E3 itself has obviously got a lot of fond memories for a lot of us, whether it be the outrageous Konami 2010, I think, press conference, or whether it be, moments like the so-called E3 of Dreams at PlayStation when they announced Final Fantasy VII Remake, Shenmue, and was it The Last Guardian or something, I think? Luke?
Yeah.
Was it
Yeah,
Last
it's a
Guardian, that
reveal.
one?
Yeah, reveal of it.
Or big, the announcement of Microsoft acquiring 5 studios. Like it's given us a lot of like massive moments, and I think it's going to be a shame that's gone away, because Pucks, you're absolutely right. In, I think it was 2020, when it kind of went digital, and like I say, it wasn't really an event. The big complaint that everyone had is E3 season, what it was that year, essentially ran from May to September. Everything was spread out over the course of 3 or 4 months or something. And it just lost a little bit of its magic that way. E3, normally you've got a conference Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Those 4 days are ridiculous for announcements, for excitement, and that was kind of lost. So I think it's a bit of a shame. I mean, this year would have been probably more like 2020 anyway, so I don't think we're losing out on much this year. And obviously Jeff Keighley has kind of come in and he's ate their lunch a little bit, because he's adapted to the more digital nature of the world these days. And he's obviously come in and offered something a bit different that people seem to enjoy and that developers are bought into. So
do you reckon he's potentially going to... Because I know a lot of us personally, when we spoke about the previous shows at the time, kind of, we had our own kind of negative thoughts about it seems to drag on and they kind of go on these kind of tangents before they get to the reveals and things like that. Do you reckon, I have no doubt that things like that are going to remain, but, does it bother us that much? Do we feel that this isn't really the format to having all of these kind of clips to streamers and all this kind of thing that maybe the most of the community maybe just don't care about? We just want to see announcements, or not to say it doesn't have its place there, but what are your thoughts on that kind of thing, I guess, rather than just announcements to have other things dabbled in it as well. If I remember rightly, there's also like Instagram filters and things like that they kept trying to publicize.
Yeah,
like, I don't care about this.
Yeah, I think that's the big issue we have with, or my personal big issue that I've got with Summer Games Fest. Because Summer Games Fest is two things. It's essentially a one night 2 to 3 hour show hosted by Jeff Keighley. And then essentially what Jeff then does is he then says, right, guys, if you're having an event around this time, let me say it's part of Summer Games Fest, because it's not a physical event or a trade show or hosted anywhere like that. It's kind of just a collection of individual events that come under one banner. And like I say, in 2020, you had both Summer Games Fest and the ESA basically saying certain shows were both part of their digital events, which shows that that they weren't part of either event. They were their own event that were just being claimed by kind of both parties. But I think, so Jeff Keighley obviously has Open Night Live, Summer Games Fest, and the Game Awards. And I think all three of his shows suffer from the same problem, and that there's too much bullshit in them. The stuff that you mentioned there, Pucks, the Instagram stuff, I guess in a lot of senses, the awards. I know that feels bad for the awards, but like even they, during the Game Awards, the awards do seem secondary to everything else. And yeah, there's like celebrity bits in there that I just don't think people care about. And what that means is you've got a show that's 2-3 hours long that maybe could be an hour if you just focused on what people really care about. But while I don't necessarily like it, I think there's got to be an appreciation and understanding that these need to be part of the show for it to run. He's not running it, with his own money through the kindness of his heart. Sure. He's got to work with, I think Amazon were big 1 year. Prime Gaming was huge during one of his events recently. He's got to work with these companies for advertisements to bring in the revenue that allows him to do the show. So it's kind of like a necessary evil almost, which kind of makes it in some way, you can tolerate it a bit. I would like maybe to cut down some of it, because like I say, maybe, the celebrity events. Who did he have? What's the guy from, I'm going to shoot myself here for not knowing this. Who's the guy from Jurassic Park?
Oh, Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum, yeah. There was a bit with him in one of his shows, and I was like, that must have cost them to get Jeff Goldblum on the show, and I didn't think it really added anything. I might be misremembering sort of his bit in there. So maybe there's bits that they can cut back, but obviously there's got to be a realization and an appreciation that, this guy needs to make money and he needs to fund these shows, and that makes those parts a necessary evil, so to speak. But Luke, I appreciate you've been a little quiet, mate. So I want to hear your thoughts on all this, mate.
I know. No, it's interested listening to that. So yeah, I think it is sad in a way, because I think, like everyone, I have really fond memories of many E3 conferences, years gone by. God knows how many years I've been watching it and following it. But it's just times have changed, and E3 already, a number of years ago was kind of this weird anathema to what it originally started, for, which was to get, essentially a bunch of retailers in a room and say, here are things that we want you to push, and, go and pick them up and go and sell them for us. So it already long since gone past that. That's, decreasing year on year in terms of relevance to the modern day because of the prevalence of, digital sales, etc. And now you've got a situation where any studio, any publisher, any hardware holder can go out there and put on whatever show they want online, and have an infinitely bigger audience than anything E3 was ever going to be able to deliver. So it just makes it's just started to make no sense over the last few years as to why it exists. And stuff like Summer Games Fest really has shown that, because that's just an entirely digital, thing, that's quite drawn out over a number of months, as you said, Scott, and it's kind of tenuous as to things that are just kind of latched on to that. But, it's just, E3 is just totally redundant now, which is, a shame. But I think, to be honest, the minute Sony left, it started to really legitimize that it's just not, it was a dying thing, because Sony were the first one to actually say, you know what, we think we can do better outside of this. We think we can do our own stuff, and we don't really need to spend, an inordinate amount of money having a presence there. So yeah, I'm a little sad about it, because, as I say, that there are a lot of great memories I have from it, watching it over the years. And it's a shame that we'll never get those kind of E3 moments again, at least in the form that they were in, a big amphitheater and a conference, the crowd reaction to it all. I think that's the thing I'll miss. But everything else, you will just get, I think we'll just get, strewn about over the course of the year, which is a bit frustrating, because the one thing E3 was good at was kind of a date in the diary, and you knew big bombs were dropping that week, which again you won't get now. But I think some publishers will stick to that kind of June-ish date. I suspect Microsoft will probably stick pretty steadfast to it. They quite like a summer event. Nintendo will probably do a direct in the summer anyway. Sony, I don't think they will. I think they just like doing stuff kind of, seems maybe September-ish now, seems they're kind of big time. And then everybody else sprinkled around those. So I'd honestly be surprised if it did actually return next year, because I just don't know how. I think this year will be, whether we'll enjoy it massively or not is a different matter, but I think it will be very successful this year for everyone. And then everyone will kind of look at, the ESA going into January of next year and go, I don't really think we want to do this again. So,
especially if Summer Games Fest does really well this year as well, which it most likely will, right? So,
which it will. I mean, it's Keighley led, and they always do really well in terms of numbers. So, I think Keighley's come in, and he is the de facto new ESA now.
I think the thing is, look, I think it really comes down to just Keely's ability to adapt to that new landscape that you've just described. Being able to, it doesn't have to be in person anymore because the trade's no longer relevant for these types of shows. Working with companies on their digital events rather than trying to force them into an in-person. And I think 2020, the lack of a 2021 and a lack of a 2022 show really demonstrate that the ESA don't have that ability to adapt, because they had a prime opportune moment in 2020 and then 2021, rather than trying to evolve it and grow that digital presence, they just cancelled it. The same again this year. So it does seem like they're really hell-bent on maintaining this physical in-person element, which I think is really going to hinder their ability to actually do it. Because like you say, yeah, next year, is there going to be one? I think that's a question. I know they're saying there is, but they also said there was going to be one this year. And what sort of appetite is there going to be from developers and publishers to attend next year if it is in person? If publishers aren't interested in doing it, then they don't have a show. They're kind of, at the mercy of these developers and publishers attending. And even if the developers and publishers do the press and the general public want to attend an in-person event, I don't think it's probably too harsh to say, but these gaming events aren't often known for their hygiene, for maybe a lack of a better way of putting it. I've heard loads of stories about people going to things like PAX, E3, and coming home unwell due to people spreading other viruses prior to COVID. And that's just going to be exaggerated a bit for years now. People are going to be nervous about attending those types of events. And if the press and the public aren't interested in going, then why are the developers and publishers going to go? But on the flip side, if the developers and publishers aren't going to go, then why would the general public or press go? So their inability to adapt at the beginning of the pandemic, I think, basically meant the writing was on the wall. And I'm with you. Look, I would really be surprised if there is actually some sort of event next year. But again, bit of a shame, I don't know if you guys remember, but back before like everything was live streamed, I used to pay GameSpot around June. GameSpot had like a premium subscription. I can't remember how much it was. It was probably like 15 quid, something for the month. And I used to pay GameSpot because they were like one of the only places to stream the press conferences in like 360p or something like that. But I was able to watch these press conferences as a kid, and it was kind of one of those things, when you were younger, it's like it was the dream to go to E3 and play all these new games and meet these people. And sadly, that's kind of reality's lost now, I think, for a lot of people.
I know for me, in terms of like good memories, it's all come from like magazines, like mainly official Nintendo magazine, because I actually managed to convince my parents to subscribe to it at the time. That's kind of where I got a bulk of my general, mostly Nintendo news, obviously, but then obviously a smattering of one-off magazines I'd get here and there, which cover other stuff. But then I remember going into school and then watching like clips that someone had put onto very early YouTube about certain things coming out, and I remember the events as well of like from the original DS, for example. I remember seeing clips from like 2003 when Reggie Fils-Aimé like opens up his jacket pocket and pulls out this new Nintendo DS concept. It was like, oh my god, it looks like a Game Boy, but it's not a Game Boy.
Or when he revealed like the GBA or something, whatever it was, and it looked like this big because Reggie Fils-Aimé.
Oh, that's the Game Boy Micro, I think. Yeah,
the Micro. Yeah. Well, those are like fun little things that I think are going to sadly be lost.
Yeah, that's what's good about the in-person thing, isn't it? And all being digital, you lose that kind of connection, I guess, to it. But as you say, at the same time, I don't think many people are buying Game Boy Micros or the like anymore. So unless they become super powerful, I guess you could fit an Xbox in your pocket that size. But yeah. I'm aware, sorry, that we've been going on a little bit and haven't mentioned any comments yet. I know we've got quite a lot saved here. You guys fancy reading some out?
Yeah, I think let's give a shout out to a couple of guys in the chat, because there's a few people in there. So we've got Stubbs, Darren, who else we got in there? Mesuko, Soren X, Boxenberger's in there, Flap, I know he hasn't been able to join us for the chat today, but he has managed to sneak in the chat there. So good morning, everyone, for joining. I think I've caught everyone there so far. Apologies if I've missed anyone's name there. But yeah, we got a couple of comments. I'll grab a couple from Stubbs here. So Stubbs says E3 is irrelevant, and he hopes it doesn't return. It's not needed. It's proven that it's not missing. Stubbs also agreed around my comments where maybe the Summer Games Fest and some Keighley shows do have a bit too much fluff. And he also agrees with Luke where he says Nintendo and PlayStation prove it's not needed to start with, and Jeff Keighley's doing a good job.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Any other types of comment? I've got a few other little things saved here.
Yeah, go for it.
I think Soren X saying, yeah, E3 is like Christmas for gamers. I love the announcements. Me too. Yeah. Maybe another FanFest digital event for Xbox, hopefully bigger too. Sorry, this is a Soren X again, which I agree. And a third one saying, I miss those blockbuster announcements. There's been some awesome announcements. What's yours? Stuff that came to mind is Metal Gear Solid 5 announcement on the Xbox stage, which was amazing.
Oh, that's an interesting one. What's like, just very quick gut reaction, what's sort of your favorite E3 announcement that you can remember?
Oh, God. I think a more recent one of mine was actually the actually seeing what Breath of the Wild was all about for the first time, because Omega Zelda fan sitting right
was
here.
Was that at E3, Pox?
They'd announced it years prior, so it was I think originally announced in 2013. Then they had a very very brief update in 2015 saying it's going to be released for 2016, and then in 2016's E3, that's when they had the massive. All of their E3 was just Zelda. They didn't show anything else, and they kind of went balls to the walls. This is the game. This is the gameplay. And then they had all of the big statues and the themed booths or kiosks, whatever you want to call them. And I remember just seeing this gameplay for the first. Because again, if you've played all the other ones up to that point, I enjoy them all. But yes, they are. It's exactly the same formula. It's just respun story and locations, but. When they showed this one, it was completely in a completely different league. Sorry, and it was for me. It was just that's more recent one I have personally. But now, what were you guys?
Look, just one stand out for you, man.
I mean, a few off the top of my head. I still remember Halo 2 way back when 2003, I think that was.
Halo 2 is probably my favorite.
That's a big one. That was a big excitement. I mean, I was only 13, so I was even more excitable then. So yeah, huge one. More recent E3 of Dreams, that was a big one. Not so much the Shenmue stuff, although I was excited for it for other people, but Final Fantasy VII and Last Guardian in particular. The God of War reveal, as in the first re-reveal with the orchestra, where they played the main theme. That I just thought that was incredible. And Metroid Prime 4. That was a huge one as well.
No, that's a good
one.
Did
they show much for Metroid? Did they show anything for Metroid?
No,
Prime?
it was just
space
just
and then
the
4. Yeah. And then kind of everybody's like, what's going on? Oh, and also a low-key one was the reveal, and I can't remember what stage this was on. I think it's Sony's. It was the reveal of Resident Evil 7. Because it was just so surprising because that was the one where they had nobody knew about it, and then they had the gameplay. It was all first person, and obviously nobody knew Resident Evil was going first person, and it was nobody knew what it was, and then right at the end it says it's Resident Evil 7, so that's a good one as well. There's so many great moments.
There is, and I think the good thing is, look, I think a lot of them we should still have. We're still going to get those great announcements. It's just going to be in a slightly different format. I think for me, Halo 2 was a standout. I think the age factor is a thing as well. Look, obviously, I was a little bit older than you at the time, but I was still just a young teenager, and seeing that gameplay was incredible. Obviously, it was held together with duct tape, it seems, but it was still amazing to see at the time. And actually, it was the one and only gaming show I've ever been to in my life. It was called like Game Stars Live or something, and it was held at the Excel Center or something in London. I think at the time. I think is the Excel now in Birmingham? Is it now moved?
No. There's one. I think there's one in Birmingham, but it's still there in London.
Yeah, so I went to that as a kid, and I got to play Halo 2 before launch, and it
Was that
mind blown.
That's really funny because I went to that, and that was So I went to that, and I stood for. So they recreated, if I remember, for Halo 2, it was a bit like a part of Zanzibar, the map that they recreated that you
because
queued
that was
in.
all you played.
All you played was a multiplayer
match.
Yeah. So I queued for 3 hours to play one map of Zanzibar, but I didn't regret it at all. My feet hurt though, because I don't know why, and I'm sure this is what happened, but they had you queue, and the ground underneath was like pebble dash. It was like pebbles with like rocks. Yeah.
I can't remember that.
Yeah, because it was supposed to be like a beachfront, like a marine post, basically, is what it was. So yeah, but I remember that, and I remember being the best in that match as well. It was great.
Whether it did or not, I do remember coming top of the scoreboard. Whether I actually did is another matter. But yeah, that was also, like I said, it's the one and only game show event. Obviously, it was nothing like E3, but it was pretty cool to go and play.
It was very exciting.
So excited for ahead of launch. And dual wield in Halo for the first time, which was incredible. And Zanzibar ended up being one of my favorite maps from Halo 2. So
I'm sure as well. Wasn't Doom 3 coming out around that time as well? And I remember, maybe was it around then, or like a really early look? And I remember they had a booth for it. You could go and look at some gameplay or something like that, but it was 18. I was like, damn.
Was it? No, I don't recall. I mean, we're talking, like 2002 or something now. It was like pretty much 20 years ago, wasn't it?
Oh, man.
Flap in the chat's just mentioned as well. Anyone remember Peter Moore's GTA 4 tattoo? Weird.
Yeah, well, Peter Moore got a Halo tattoo as well, if I remember correctly. I really like Peter Moore. He was a pretty cool guy. He was a really good personality. He was really good on stage as well. It was actually nice seeing him in that. Slightly off topic, but the Xbox documentary that they released not too long ago, and they had sort of like previous leaders of Xbox on there. It was really cool to see Peter Moore on there, because I did actually really like him. I've actually just seen a comment here that I want to get to as well, because we're talking about obviously all these fond memories for good reasons, but I also think E3 is remembered a lot for the not so good reasons. And there's a comment here from Sorax where he says, "Attack giant enemy crab for massive damage," which is still one of my most favorite lines from E3.
That's a great one.
Press conference. Obviously, the Kaz Hirai and his $599 still gets repeated to this day as well. Obviously, Don Matrix interview with Keighley after E3, where it's like, "We've got a console for you. It's called an Xbox 360." There's a lot of like goofs that I think will be missing, because everything's pre-recorded. Generally speaking, I think we'll miss the goofs, which I think is a massive shame.
Yeah,
I think it as well. Just a quick, like, if you do have nostalgia for some of these conferences, obviously the vast majority you can just go and watch on YouTube, which is great. But Digital Foundry also do a rewatch of certain conferences. So they've done the Konami 2010. They did the PlayStation 3 reveal, and they're really funny and really entertaining. And I often kind of rewatch them. So particularly the Konami one, which is just amazing, just absolutely amazing. Please go and watch them.
Watch back of the Konami one as well. Look, I don't know if you've seen that. And,
I've seen that one.
It's hilarious. Guys, if you haven't seen the Konami 2010 conference, please go and watch it. And it is actually good to watch it with someone like Easy Allies at Digital Foundry, because like their reactions are just as funny as the actual event itself. So we're not going to get any of those anymore, which is a shame. But I'm sure the developers and publishers are looking forward to the fact that they're not going to have the piss taken out of them afterwards for a change, because obviously, they took a lot of heat.
No, that's cool. I think really good conversations there. I really enjoyed that. I saw a comment here from Stubbs as well. I think sums it up nicely as well. Saying that the general view is that E3 won't be missed by many, but it's interesting. Agree that I remember a time when it wouldn't be like that. I think it would definitely be missed. So I know I will miss it, just to kind of comment against that, I guess. But I do agree with the general sentiment that most people, I think, are on the side of, Summer Games Fest or things like that moving forward will slowly kind of eat up what E3 is, I guess. And then hopefully, I'd like to think, maybe it will, rise like a phoenix and burn bright once again. But I kind of don't see that happening unless they severely change their format into basically a Summer Games Fest competitor rather than
but that's already there, so they can't really
exactly
do that, can they? I think the best we can hope for is that Keighley's able to condense the Summer Game Fest into a shorter period of time. It's not going to be a 4-day thing. It's never going to be a 4-day thing ever again, because I think one of the benefits that is maybe worth highlighting is you've heard stories from developers. And the Halo 2 one's a really good example where basically they're crunching just to get a demo ready for E3 because it's got a date. You've got to have this ready for this time. You've got to have something playable. You've got to have a chunk of gameplay ready. And that takes resource away from just developing the game. So
I think Anthem's actually a great example of that, isn't it? Because I remember seeing dev interviews not too long ago, but a while back, about how the team basically crunched to the nines to show off this impressive looking demo for Anthem. But then obviously, as we all are well aware, I've not even played the game, but I've seen from just countless articles that the game's completely tanked and it was nothing like what it was meant to be, to the point where, what was it, within 6 months, EA basically just canned all future updates and basically just killed the game off.
That's right. So, and they even announced Anthem 2.0 and then canned that as well.
I remember
that. And I think that is going to be a benefit to us, and I think this is maybe something we need to, appreciate a bit as well, is the developers having more control over when they show off their games will hopefully mean when they show them off, we have a better showing of the game. Maybe Halo doesn't look like Halo if they just showed it when it was ready. Halo Infinite's initial reveal, and they don't have to use that resource that they would typically spend getting a playable demo ready for a game for a show floor. They can actually put that resource into the game and developing the game and getting it ready for launch whenever that may be. So there are going to be some benefits, but like I say, I think if Keighley can condense it to even just a month where we get a majority of the stuff in there, that would be good, because then that's going to be like, right, this is the month where all the big stuff's going to happen, at least in the summer, and then we're still going to have the Game Awards, which is going to be kind of like the big one-day event, I think, at some point in the year, at the end of the year. So there's still going to be lots to look forward to. But I think E3 too late to the party. Jeff Keighley's done it. So if they want to go for that thing, they've already lost, unfortunately. So it's going to be really interesting to see if or how they pivot, or even how they try if they do.
Yeah, no, sure thing. I think I'm going to move on to the next topic now, actually, because we've got a few other things we want to talk about before we plan on clocking off at 11. But thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for the chat as well. I see you are very active here and giving us some of your comments, and of which we've read out as well. So no, thank you all very much for being here. And I'm now going to move on to talking about some news which came out earlier this week, or a couple of days ago, about how there are 4 US senators who are deeply concerned about the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard. And, should we be alarmed? Should we be worried? And what does this even mean? I'll admit I am not completely in the loop with how far this goes in, but I think if you're happy to, Luke, I'm going to throw this to you as our resident legal expert. If that's a good thing to say. I'd like to think it is. What is... have you seen this news for a start, I guess? And should we as gamers be concerned? Could this fall through? Or is this one of those things where, where it's actually nothing to worry about? Because I had seen some comments and things online, again, from self-proclaimed lawyers of the internet saying about how there's nothing to worry about because it's all just for propaganda, but to push their political campaigns and all that kind of stuff. And if they really didn't want to do it, or they were really unhappy, then it may have to go to court, or which they may well lose, and blah, blah, blah. But from someone who's actually more in the know than, self-proclaimed internet peoples, what are your thoughts on this? Should we be worried?
I I mean, I don't think if you, I think if you want the merger to go through and that's how you want it to go, then I don't think people need to be particularly worried. I think people get in their twisted up in their pants a bit about this a lot, and it's been a bit bizarre to canvass the internet with people really rooting for Microsoft on this. So I just find that quite weird. I think you can absolutely want the merger to happen because it will benefit you as a gamer. No issues whatsoever with that, and it's exciting from that perspective. But to want Microsoft to complete, really desperately want them to complete an acquisition of a $70 billion company is quite weird, and then to kind of batter against senators who are raising, I think, legitimate concerns. And I say that in a particular sense because I'll address one point of it, is quite weird in of itself. So I think the problem with what they said was that people just really looked at the headlines of this and just said, well, that's nonsense because Microsoft is such a fantastic place to work. And it's true that, it seems to be true that Microsoft have become a much better place to work over the years. They still have problems, of course they do, because they're a massive, massive company. They're a massive conglomerate of companies spanning the entire world. So to think that, Activision will just suddenly magically get better because they join Microsoft, whose workplace culture is seemingly a lot better than Activision's, is a bit of a fallacy because it doesn't work like that. Because it's still going to be a separate organization. And what the senators were saying was that, look, Activision Blizzard workers have had years of discrimination, unfair labor practices, sexual misconduct issues, and they've tried to constantly raise these over the years, particularly in the recent months, and their concerns, essentially, the senators, were just that if the acquisition happens, people might just forget about it, in the sense of they won't, nobody's going to start pushing Microsoft to make sure that these workers are listened to and heard, and that there are actual cultural changes within Activision Blizzard. It's not that they think that the workers are going from one terrible workplace culture to an even worse workplace culture when they join Microsoft. That's not what they said, but it's the thing that people seem to run with online because they just didn't read the article and they just heard or just read a tweet from Warren. Specifically, they said that, look, they should just, the senators said that the FTC just need to really carefully review the ways in which, Activision Blizzard have failed to protect their workers. And if the merger itself is going to exacerbate that issue, right? So that's all that they said. And that's all that letter essentially says. That these four senators wrote and sent to the chair of the FTC. It is somewhat political posturing, of course it is, because they want to be seen to do stuff. They have different bits of legislation. I've not looked into this fully, but I think Warren maybe has proposed a new form of competition legislation in the US, for example. And there is that angle to it. Of course there is. There's also, I'm sure, a legitimate angle where they genuinely do, want workers like this to be heard. But no one's saying in this argument that, well, Microsoft are a shit place to work and they're horrible, and their culture's bad. Nobody said that at all. People are just concerned that, mega mergers like this, the people at the bottom, quote unquote, your standard run-of-the-mill worker who has suffered from, discrimination or malpractice or any of these different things, it's just going to be swept under the rug and nothing's going to happen to change that situation. And I don't think that is the case. I think what Microsoft have said as kind of, or what Spencer has said as effectively as he can, is to say that, look, we're aware of all of these things, and we're going to try and change that, right? And if he hasn't publicly said that, then I'm sure that's something they would like to do. But their hands are tied at the moment because they can't just say exactly what they want to do. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. We don't even know, and this is potentially a bad thing, but we don't know if there are any workers that are going to leave as a result of the merger. And by leave, I mean they're going to be kicked out. So which can happen, as well. So it's a very sensitive area and a very sensitive subject. I don't think it's going to impact the merger itself, i.e. the success of it. Because the FTC won't be reviewing. I'm sure they will have this in their mind, but actually they're reviewing it from a more of a market dimension. In other words, is the merger going to impede competition in the market? Is it bad for consumers? They're not looking at it from a employee perspective, which I think many would argue that they should do that as well. And I think this letter is really just to remind the FTC that there are people involved in this merger. There are thousands and thousands of workers, and they shouldn't be forgot about when the FTC are assessing this. The FTC need to have in their mind that this is going to impact on a lot of people and consider the effects of the merger itself. So that's it, really. I think it's been weirdly blown out. And yeah, there have been a lot of people online, frustratingly, that just say, oh, well, it doesn't matter. It makes no difference. X, Y, and Z. With no background, no knowledge of any of this stuff. It's very frustrating. And the most frustrating thing is this weird routing for an acquisition. For this merger to go through. You have no personal stake in this. All this means at the end of it is that you'll get some games on Game Pass. That's it, basically. Like that's what it means. Like you don't console need wars. To have, yeah, exactly. Console wars. You don't need to have a big stake in this. I think you can want this to go through because as a gamer you're happy about it, but you don't need to weed yourself into arguments about, will the FTC listen to Senator Warren on the complaints? Like it's just nonsense. Just go and play some games. It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I've got to say about it, really.
I think, Pox, we can probably just end the show there, mate. I don't think there's anything
I can't add to that at all. So I think you've covered it all. I know Stubbs has said that he likes hearing Luke's comments on the subjects, as you know the area very well, which is you definitely sound like you know what you're talking about. So it must be true.
Yeah, Luke's absolutely the go-to for these sorts of things. I mean, if I can maybe add something, and I'm in complete agreement with you, Luke, when you say that. It's through no background and obviously having no view of these types of deals. Obviously, I'm not in that line of work. It does appear that the concerns raised are largely around the people, as you say, and I guess from my position, the outside looking in, I kind of don't personally think it'll impact the potential of the deal going through. I think it is still at risk because it's a $70 billion acquisition. So of course it's going to be scrutinized heavily by whoever decides to review. And of course there's going to be a lot of interest in it. It will be weird if a $70 billion acquisition didn't have an awful lot of scrutiny. I think one element that I've seen as well that I don't think you touched on, Luke, which I think is perfectly valid for these politicians to raise, though, is the issue of Bobby Kotick himself. This is a guy who has been at the top of this company throughout those years of sexual misconduct issues, all the issues that have been well publicized about Activision Blizzard. This is the guy that's been at the top, and he's led this company through this period, and he's effectively done jack shit about it until it became public more recently. And he's going to profit heavily from this deal. Rumored to be, what is it, over $200 million, $250 million personally he's likely to receive from this acquisition. So I understand and I agree with any concerns that people have that somebody who can allow this type of culture to develop and fester within a company is going to profit so much from this acquisition.
And effectively get away with it, isn't it, as well?
Essentially. I mean, they've effectively got away with it already. It was just this past week when one of the lawsuits was settled for $18 million which is effectively pocket change for a company the size of Activision Blizzard, and certainly Microsoft when they acquire them. Obviously, Microsoft aren't involved at this stage. We should be absolutely clear. And that doesn't feel right, does it? It doesn't feel right that somebody's going to profit so much from this acquisition when he's the one that's allowed that culture to develop. But I think the issue is what can be done about that? He owns the shares of Activision Blizzard. He's either going to get a significant payout through shareholder dividends through his salary, which I know he's reduced to the minimum base salary not too long ago. Even if Microsoft doesn't come and purchase them, if Tencent comes purchase them, or even if they don't get acquired, he's still going to profit significantly because he's a significant shareholder at an extremely large company. So I unfortunately don't know how that can be any different. You know, what changes? He gets payout from Microsoft if the deal doesn't go through. He gets a payout through shareholder dividends or through whoever purchased them in the future. I don't see how there's a way where this situation resolves itself in either direction and we're satisfied with the outcome from Bobby Kotick's personal stand-in, because
is this where the politicians can come into this though? Is that, I mean, I'll imagine maybe Luke's can answer this perhaps, I don't know, or whatever yourself, Scott, as well. But, you know, if politicians are getting involved and they go, hold on a minute, we've just seen all these filings, and then we've also, on top of that, we've obviously got the official California lawsuits going on, the state of California that are directly, is it suing? That's not suing. I don't know what the word for is. Investigated Activision Blizzard for it. I mean, given these damning reports, I mean, not to say that will it stop the acquisition, but more, will this put Kotick in a bad stead when it comes to the acquisition happening to the point where he won't profit from it? Or can they stop him from profiting off of bad practices and culture which he's himself developed? Or is that possible?
No. I mean,
he owns the stock. If the stock gets sold, I guess from my untrained perspective, I assume he profits from it. And
I just wonder from the angle of, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, of course, but it's just more of a, you know, as a corporation that you're running, you are still held, surely, to some degree against your state laws. At least I know American employment law is far different from most of the world, but I would have thought that maybe they could hold him against some state laws about you've not done this or that to ensure a safe working environment or X, Y, Z. But like, does the fact that he owns a majority share and basically owns the business matter in that case? Or
well, I mean, in terms of, and I don't know state or federal laws in the US really, apart from very specific federal stuff. So, but I mean, there's nothing to prevent, you know, in some of these cases that are coming down the line, from him to be, you know, adjoined as, you know, a defendant in a civil case or something like that, and having some civil liability attached to him, you know, in terms of a fine or something like that. So there's nothing that prevents any of that, and that may happen. It may not. But in terms of him directly profiting from this acquisition, there's nothing really that will intervene on that. They're two separate processes. The acquisition is a contractual, private, you know, quote unquote private thing, and no matter what happens in the civil side of things, whether Kotick's, you know, fined or stuff, you know, it's not really going to impact on what's going on over here in the Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger. So no matter what, he's going to get his golden parachute payment. Now, obviously, maybe there's something that happens on the civil side that means that, you know, he has to, you know, pay some money out, which kind of, I suppose, indirectly affects his golden parachute, etc. But I mean, it's never going to be the size of his golden parachute, is it? You know, it's going to be at most a couple of $1 million, you would think, if any wrongdoing attaches him at all from a civil perspective, of, you know, in any of this California stuff. So yeah, unfortunately, look, it's just the way of life. And it's a very legitimate concern. Like I think Bernie Sanders was talking about it. Like he was saying it's just really unacceptable that he can kind of come out of it smelling like roses, like he has. And whilst I think everybody agrees with that, nothing you can really do about it. So I think it's one of those people just have to accept that and hope that he gets his comeuppance elsewhere.
I think there have been, maybe, if there's one way to look at it, and this is a very loose way of looking at it, I guess, is the investigation is at Activision Blizzard directly. I don't think Bobby Kotick is personally under investigation through any of these.
I don't think so.
He might end up being a more significant part of the investigation. He obviously has been quoted as doing some alleged, shall I say, at this stage, to have done some pretty horrific things. I believe he was particularly, one particular moment that, if I remember, that stood out from the lawsuit was, didn't he threaten to apparently kill somebody? I believe that was Bobby Kotick, a secretary or something like that. Obviously, those are sort of allegations at this stage. So as Luke says, that might turn into something civil. That might turn into maybe him having to pay out, but ultimately that's not going to likely impact the actual potential of the deal going through. But his personal fortune and the personal fortune, I guess, of those other shareholders appear to have been impacted. Obviously, the share price of Activision Blizzard dropped significantly following the investigation and following the allegations of sexual misconduct, to the point where that's probably the only reason why the deal is actually going through. Because what was the purchase price? 70 billion, and I think the share price is something like, or the market cap or something was like 50, 60, something like that at the time. But the market cap had been as high as 100 billion prior to the allegations, which would have obviously, if Microsoft or anyone wanted to purchase Activision Blizzard at that point, would have maybe cost them double what it actually was, which would have obviously netted Bobby Kotick and the other shareholders a even larger golden parachute. So it has impacted them in some ways, but what we're still talking about $250 million that is going to get. So there has been some impact, but obviously in the grand scheme of things, it's not an awful lot. Which, it's like I say, it's just a massive shame. Unfortunately, that someone's going to profit from it, and I guess all we can hope is if the deal goes through, and I still think it is absolutely an if at this point, is the benefit to the employees of Activision Blizzard will be that they'll have a better working environment, and the stories of allegation of and abuse will hopefully disappear. But it should be, we should probably mention the Undead Labs. So I think their story that came out this week, I think these stories are very loosely linked, because Undead Labs was obviously acquired by Microsoft back in 2017, 2018, whenever it was now. And there have been stories of similar, I guess less severe allegations, but similar allegations from that studio. And that kind of shows that Microsoft maybe haven't closely managed that studio as much as maybe they needed to. And you could talk about Perfect Dark being maybe another example, maybe 343 being another example where they're very hands off. But is that a sign of that they're just going to let Activision Blizzard continue as they have been, and they're not going to have too much in what's the phrase? They're not going to be involved too much in the day-to-day. They're just going to let them continue as they have been, like maybe they have done with Undead Labs. And if that's the case, will the culture change at Activision Blizzard? Obviously, the hope is that it would, but track record recently doesn't appear great for Microsoft, it seems.
I'd like to think that, with those things you said, that hopefully Microsoft has started opening their eyes a bit more to say that, I think there's a limit to how hands-off you can be. I mean, hands-off in that you're not controlling how they're running their development schedules or things like that necessarily, but I think, they should probably be more hands-on to the point of embedding, as Luke mentioned as well, that apparently the culture there is like really good in Microsoft now for the most part, and all that kind of, blah, 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 blah. But if it is so great, then be a bit more hands-on in that you try to imbue that positive working culture into your, into these subsidiaries, right? That seems to make sense to me. I mean, I appreciate you're going from an IT company to a game dev company, which of course have different ways of working, mainly because it's being a creative field, etc. But I don't see why that should stop Microsoft being able to embed their a more positive work culture into these other businesses.
That's the hope. But I think that is going back to Luke's point. That's exactly the concern that these people have, is that, Microsoft need to work with these employees and create a better working environment for them. And if the acquisition goes through, there can't be a situation where kind of all the stuff that's gone on is just forgotten about. And those allegations kind of just get swept under the rug. It's right, Bobby Kotick's gone now, Microsoft owned them, so we can forget about all that. That can't be the case.
No, of course.
And like say the Undead Labs story kind of raises some concerns about, Microsoft's ability to actually create a better culture, especially considering they've had these issues with Undead Labs, which is tiny in comparison to Activision Blizzard. How are they going to be able to do that for such a, when they acquire such a large company? We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. We'll see whenever we find out. Hopefully it won't be too long, because these sort of comments and stories are going to continue until the deal's approved or whatever.
Yeah, no, of course. So let's just say, long story short, I guess, fingers crossed that it does improve in the future, but only the future will tell, unfortunately, for them and for us, I guess, outside looking in. I'm aware we've only got 2 minutes left. Thank you for tuning in this morning. I'll do another quick roll call as well. So thank you, Stubbs Gaming, Gaz, Darren's here. Yeah, Soren X, Flaps tuned in. I know Boxerberg was here earlier as well. And World Champ 5225 and Mexico as well. Thank you all very much for joining us this morning. Hope you've had your teas or coffees in hand or your slices of toast or whatever else. I suppose just to close... I still got yours. I finished.
I'm all out. I've even put it in my Dobby's Garden Centre. I know that's back to front. Travel mug to keep it warm, but I'm all out.
How about you, Luke? Did you was you set up with a coffee, or did you already have one before the show?
Oh, I had a quick one before the show just to get me going.
Perk them up.
I'll have another one now though to enjoy it.
I think just a quick one before we do close out. I guess is Microsoft has. It is rumored, to be working on a family plan for Xbox Game Pass. And for me, I immediately thought that if this is a thing, I hope they run it kind of like what the Nintendo Switch Online family plan does, whereby you haven't all got to be in the same household. You just have your accounts linked to, say, the central bill payer, effectively. And then I'm hoping that rather than me paying potentially $10.99 on my own, I can, join in with a number of other people and hopefully maybe get it for a lot cheaper a month. So that's the kind of thing I thought was quite cool. But how about you guys? Do you think if this is true and it does come to pass, is this the kind of thing you think you could benefit from? Or is it more of you don't have many other people in your circle or things like that which may enjoy it?
Do either of you guys game share at the moment with anyone?
I don't know.
Luke, do you game share?
But no, I don't.
Oh, so the way that I'm looking at the moment, I think it's probably worth mentioning, Pucks, this was broken by Jez Corden, Windows Central, who announced it. He had an article, and I think from what he wrote, the understanding is it'll be for up to 5 people, and it will work similarly to Nintendo Switch Online, where you won't have to have everyone in the same household, which is obviously good. And it actually reminds me of back at the Xbox One launch. That was kind of part of it, where you'd have Xbox families. And if I remember back at the time, it was kind of up to 10. That was kind of their pitch for this DRM world that they were trying to, or always online world that they had envisaged back then. So I do game share, which effectively means that I share my Game Pass subscription with a friend. So we essentially get 2 subscriptions for the price of one. And if this is for 5, it'll be interesting to see how that works out for those who do game share, like myself. If it works out cheaper to have 5 people on one family plan than it does having 4 to 5 people sharing 2 or 3 subscriptions, then yeah, I'd be absolutely up for it. And I don't know if BMG is actually in the chat, but he said he had 5 Game Pass Ultimate subscriptions in his house. 5.
I saw
in
that as
one.
well. That's mad.
Yeah, which is obviously, so people like him, and obviously people who have bigger circles, I guess, are definitely going to benefit from this. And I think it's a long time overdue, especially considering Nintendo do it, PlayStation do it. If you, I know you guys talked about the Spartacus stuff last week, but they've got sorry, they don't have a family plan, but they've got an online plan with, an annual plan, apologies, which obviously offers discounts, which is something that Game Pass doesn't have. It doesn't have family plans at the moment. It doesn't have online, annual discounts at the moment. So I think this is a long time coming, and it'll just be interesting to see what the pricing works out as, and hopefully, a lot of people will benefit. A lot of people will benefit from it.
How about yourself, Luke? Have you got a circle of people around you think you could benefit from such a thing if one comes to pass, or are you just happy paying for yourself? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I think there are potentially friends that I have who do have Game Pass who I think it would be beneficial if we all could get in on it. I think that would be helpful to them in particular. And so if I could do that, I would. Other than that, at the moment, I just have my own subscription. So I think it's a great thing, and hopefully they bring it in as soon as possible, because I think it will benefit a lot of people. But at the moment, I don't have too much use for it personally. But I'd always have a look at it and see if I could get others in on the act. I think it's stuff like this, whether it's Disney Plus or Netflix or any of these where you can kind of share the love, so to speak, they're always really helpful, particularly in a world where subscription services are just like ubiquitous and everybody has tons of them. If you can help other people get access to these without having to pay some of the ridiculous amounts, I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, especially in a world where everything's so bloody expensive these days, everything's going up. Being able to share the costs now will be beneficial. Like I say, even just from like a competition perspective, it's something that their competitors allow in some form in terms of just discounts generally in one way or another that Microsoft doesn't. So just seeing in chat as well, Stubbs says that he game shares with his son. In Jumpy Line 73, welcome to the chat, mate. I don't think we've seen your name before. Apologies if you have been in.
Welcome.
He just says it would save him a lot of money as he pays for 4 individual Game Pass subs. Like I say, BMG, I think Stubbs mentioned there, BMG's got 5. So a lot of people are really going to benefit from this. It's going to help them save money, which is great.
No, that's good news. And I think with that, we're kind of coming up to the end of our hour-long show. So thank you all very much for joining us chat, and to both you, Scott and Luke, as well. I hope you've enjoyed our coffee morning chat. I know it's a bit, off-key, casual, on cams as well, which I think is a nice thing. Let us know what you think. But before I do close off officially, I would just like to add that thank you to those who have provided us with some feedback. Actually, we have taken it on board. We have taken it pretty seriously, and we've talked about it behind the scenes, and we'll continue to have a think. And we want to improve the channel and the community experience for all of you guys. So thank you for your feedback. And if anyone else has any other comments, please feel free to either DM one of us online, or put it on if you're on our Discord. Sorry, we have a podcast suggestions channel on there as well, where you can write in text. But equally, if you think the Discord could be improved, we also have a server suggestions tab as well. So if anything you think we could, anything you believe we could do better, or any suggestions you may have for things you'd like us to cover on future shows, whatever else, feel free to let us know either personally or on those channels. But outside of that as well, again, just before I do close off, I know there has been some comments about how it will be quite cool for us to maybe do some streaming now and again. I know Scott has done some through Twitch, so by all means check that out whenever he goes live. I've also behind the scenes, just on my own, kind of just been practicing it and trying to get a setup together, just to kind of maybe do some not necessarily on my own, but just to do some game streaming in general. If maybe there's a week when we can't do a show, maybe one of us could just do some streaming, game streaming instead. So if that's the kind of thing you guys think you'd like to see from any of us at any kind of point in time, please let us know what you think, and we'll work on it. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I hope Scott and Luke, you've enjoyed today as well.
Of course, mate, as always.
Absolutely.
Cool. If there's nothing else then, guys, I'll let you get on with your Sundays, and hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll see you again later in the week.
Take care,
take care, everybody. Cheers.